Before we get started with today's video, I have an announcement to make. After years of telling other people's stories, I finally released one of my own. My novel Eternal Reign is available now in both ebook and paperback format for those of you who are like me and prefer to collect physical media. You can grab a copy right now on Amazon through the link in the description of this video. And now back to our regularly scheduled program. Quick disclaimer, Baldur's Gate 3 is a massive game with tons of side stories and characters that while they have quests and plot points that span all 3 acts, they aren't necessarily pivotal to the main plot. In this video, I'll be covering what I see as the most likely canon path for the story, and that means some things won't be mentioned. If you don't hear me talk about your favorite side plot or I handle something in a way that you didn't, that doesn't necessarily mean either route is inherently wrong. We won't find out what the canon story is until Baldur's Gate 4 comes out in a decade or so, but for now, here's how I think the story is meant to play out. Hope you enjoy. The story starts with you and a lot of other people in a very messed up situation. You're all trapped on a nautiloid, a mind flayer warship, and locked in pods where you're injected with mind flayer larvae in one of the most unpleasant ways possible. The things crawl into your eye and lodge themselves in your brain. The process will eventually turn you into a mind flayer, but before it can be completed, the ship is attacked by some dragon-riding githyanki, which throws it off course. The damage they do causes the pods to open, which lets you escape, but you're not the only one to break free. Lae'zel, a gith who went through the same unsanitary procedure that you did, sees you and goes to kill you since she thinks you're one of the mind flayer's slaves. But when the creature in your head links your mind to the one in hers, she realizes that you're another escapee. And since there's going to be a lot of fighting to get through the ship, she figures that the two of you teaming up will have a better chance of getting out of there and hopefully getting the bugs out of your brains before you transform into mind flayers. The change won't happen overnight, but it doesn't exactly take long, so you need to get off of the ship as fast as you can, and the best way to do that is to head to the helm and take over the whole thing. It won't be nearly as easy as it sounds, but it's the only thing that the two of you can do, so you head off. On the way, you pass another pod that has a woman trapped inside. She begs you not to leave her there, so against Lae'zel's wishes, you open the container. The newly freed woman calls herself Shadowheart, and when her mind links with yours, you realize that she's infected too. So after she grabs a weird object out of the pod that she won't tell you about, your group of 2 turns to 3 and you head to the helm. The place is in total chaos with mind flayers and demons fighting each other. One of them thinks you're thralls, so he tells you to connect the very disgusting tentacles on the clearly living ship to get them all out of there. You do it right when a dragon sticks his head in and sets fire to everything. The ship teleports somewhere, but it's pretty messed up after all of that, so it starts to crash. But you get knocked out of the thing before it hits the ground. You should have died from the fall, but something catches you before you become a skid mark on the beach, and you head off to figure out where you are. You find Shadowheart laying out the same way you were, way more alive than she should be. She has no idea how she's not dead, but she's not complaining, and she decides that since both of you need to find a way to get the mind flayer bugs out of your heads, sticking together is the best way to go. So the two of you head off to find someone who specializes in brain bug removal. You don't get far before you see a pale man who claims he's got one of those brain monsters cornered and he wants your help to kill it. He was actually lying so he could get the jump on you. He saw you on the ship, and he's not sure whether or not you're trying to capture him. But when your minds link, he realizes that you're in the same boat that he is, and you'll make a better ally than an enemy. His name is Astarion, and he had been in Baldur's Gate when the mind flayer snatched him, so he has no idea what the worm in his head is actually going to do to him. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your point of view, you let him know that the bugs are going to turn you all into mind flayers, so since you're looking for a cure, he decides to join you. Apparently surviving crashes from alien ships isn't all that uncommon because your growing crew comes across a mage that apparently messed up a teleportation spell and got stuck in a rock. His name is Gale, and when you free him from what was probably going to be a very unpleasant death, he immediately figures out that you have a bug in your brain and decides to tag along with you to help find a cure because he's not all that fond of growing tentacles out of his face. Lae'zel survived the crash too, but she ended up getting locked in a cage by some tieflings who were debating whether or not they should kill her since one of their friends ran into some of her kind and they were all very murdery, not too pleasant people. When she sees you, she links her mind with yours and tells you to help her. Shadowheart is all for leaving the woman to her fate since she was perfectly fine with leaving her on the ship to die. But Lae'zel claims to know of a cure for your condition, so you decide to talk the tieflings out of killing her. They aren't exactly fighters anyway, so they didn't want to kill the woman, and they're more than willing to leave and handle other business. They have a camp nearby, and there's a druid there named Nettie who is a pretty good healer, so it may be worth going to see her if you can make it there without getting mauled by goblins. When they leave, Lae'zel lets you know that her people have a cure for the infection. All she has to do is find one of the spots where they set up a creche. That's where they hatch their eggs, train their children, and so on and so forth. So they'll definitely have the medical equipment there. Since one of the tieflings had run into some gith, Lae'zel figures that they've camped nearby, so she wants to go to the camp and talk to the man. Since you have quite a few reasons to head to the camp anyway, that's your next stop. But you get there right when a group of goblins show up to attack. Apparently some mercenaries had gone out with one of the druids, and whatever they were doing had gone wrong. So in a genius move, while being chased by goblins, the mercs went straight back to the druids' camp. You join in the fight to help deal with the thing, since that's the only way you'll be able to go inside and handle your own business. And obviously the leader of the refugees at the camp, a tiefling named Zevlor, is not happy that the mercenaries led the goblins to the camp since there are children there. Not only that, they lost the druid. They had gone to some ruins that turned out to be full of goblins, which means the man didn't lead a handful of the creatures to a place filled with helpless women and children. He potentially led a whole army there. The fact that he doesn't seem to care about that in the least ticks you off so much that you do the only rational thing, and that's punch him in the face. Zevlor was getting ready to do that himself, but since you saved him the trouble, he moves on to the more serious problem. He has to find a way to get his people to safety, because the druids are about to kick everyone out of the grove, and the goblin attack is only going to make them do it faster. They've already started doing a ritual to cut the grove off from the rest of the world, but Zevlor's people aren't fighters, so if they leave, the goblins or one of the other hundreds of violent creatures around the area will slaughter them all long before they reach Baldur's Gate. And Kaga, the new first druid, won't even talk to the man, but she might talk to you, so Zevlor asks you to try and buy them some time. Another man, Will, the same one who helped you all fight the goblins, has been trying to teach the tieflings how to fight so they can protect themselves on the road. But just like you, he was on the nautiloid and has a tadpole in his head too. Your minds link and you see that Will had been chasing a demon through Avernus when he'd ended up getting snatched and implanted. He knows that he's going to end up changing, but he has to catch the demon first. Her name is Karlach, and she was a high-ranking warrior in the Blood War, so having her run around free to wreak havoc on regular people is not something Will can allow. He'd almost had her when he chased her onto the ship, but the whole getting captured thing kinda put a dampener on his mission. Since she sounds extremely dangerous and you apparently don't already have enough on your plate, you agree to join Will in his hunt for Karlach after you chat with the leader of the Druids. You can tell that this is going to go well by the fact that the Druids are arguing with a crowd of tieflings when you get there. One of their children stole something from the Druids, and now Kaga is getting ready to punish the little girl. The tieflings are ready to fight to get the child free until one of the druids turns into a bear and gets ready to maul them. Not too many people are willing to stand face to face with a regular bear, let alone a druid one, so they back off and go to try to figure out another way to save their daughter. The druids nearly turn you away too, but Kaga wants to talk to you, so you get to meet the woman. She's not a nice person, something you see immediately since she's in the process of threatening a little girl with a snake. It's so bad that even another druid is telling her she's doing too much. The woman goes as far as to threaten him, especially when he mentions their missing leader Halsin, but you convince the woman to let the girl go. The only reason she had stolen the druid's idol is because she heard it was a part of the ritual that they were doing that was going to make her people have to leave. She figured that if they didn't have it, they'd have to cancel the ritual and her people wouldn't be sent off to certain death. Kaga is perfectly fine with sentencing all of the tieflings to death if it will make her life and the life of her people easier, but she is willing to give Zevlor and the others time to prep for their trip, as long as you go and help them get out of the grove as quickly as possible. You agree to do it, but first you have to hunt down Nettie to see if she can remove the bugs from your brains. When the druid realizes what's wrong with you, she takes you all into the back room where a dead elf is laid out on the table. The dark elf had attacked her and Halsin along with a small squad of goblins. When they had killed him, one of the mind flayer bugs climbed out of his ear. That was why Halsin had gone with the mercenaries in the first place. He wanted to find out what was going on with the goblins and the mind flayers and figure out how to deal with the problem. He knows more about the creatures than anyone, and he may have been able to help you get them out of your head, but since Nettie can't, she offers you some poison to drink the moment you start to show signs of changing. Nobody would agree to do that, and when you refuse, she tries to kill you. After you put an end to all of her living, your crew decides that tracking down Halsin may be your best bet at finding a cure, if he's even still alive. So you all leave Nettie's corpse in the vault and head back to Zevlor to let him know about Kaga before you head off to track down the druid. Zevlor is in quite a rough spot. The druids are willing to hurt children, so none of his people are safe there, but if they leave, they're at the mercy of the goblins. They're dead no matter what they do, but he does have an idea. Goblins aren't exactly the most organized group, so if their leaders suddenly disappeared, then the army would fall apart and the tieflings would be safe to leave. It's not an easy job, but since Halsin disappeared somewhere in the goblins' camp and you need him, you decide to kill two birds with one stone. With the plan in mind, your team leaves the Druid Grove and heads to the goblin camp to hopefully find Halsin and take down an entire army in the process. When your crew heads off to deal with the goblins, you all come face to face with the devil Karlach that Will was hunting. She looks about as big and scary as he claimed, but as soon as she starts talking, you realize that she's not nearly as bad as what he said she was, and he's not the only person who's hunting her. She had seen you on the Mind Flayer ship, which makes things a little easier since she's been injected with one of your brain bugs too, and that lets your minds link, and you get to see just how she ended up where she is. You see Karlach fighting in a very unpleasant world as a frontline soldier in the Blood War, but she wasn't fighting for either side like Will thought. She was trying to escape the war altogether. She's pretty sure she can convince the man that she's not who he thinks she is, if he stops trying to stab her for long enough for her to talk. Since he's at your camp at that moment, she may get her chance, but first she has another small problem she needs sorted out. She was a very good fighter, so Zariel, the archdevil that she was working for, isn't all that keen on letting her get away. She's been sending a lot of people after her to bring her back to Avernus, and a few of them are nearby, so she wouldn't mind having your help in putting them down. After that, she'll join you on your quest to get the bugs out of your heads. Since having a flaming tiefling warrior on your side has no real downsides in a world where lots of things want to kill you, you all take care of the people who were hunting her before heading back to your camp to get the inevitable confrontation with Will out of the way. The man is very determined to complete his mission to kill Karlach, but he's not above seeing reason, especially when the tadpole in her head links with his and shows him that she wasn't sent to the Sword Coast by the demons, and she's not planning on hurting anyone, except for the people who deserve it. Now that he knows that, he can't bring himself to kill her, which is good for Karlach, but not so much for him since he'll have to answer to the one who gave him the mission, and he knows that she won't be happy about him going against her orders. He's not wrong. His patron shows up when he refuses to do the deed, and she's not exactly what you'd expect when you take in the fact that Will comes off as the do-gooder Boy Scout type. His patron is a demon named Mazora who Karlach knows very well, and is not all that fond of. Will signed a contract that binds him to the woman in exchange for power, but part of the deal was that he'd only hunt monsters. Since Karlach's not a monster, he technically shouldn't have to kill her, but anyone who's ever heard of deals with demons know that you should always read the fine print because there's always a loophole in there. Will's contract says that he'll only be ordered to kill demons, heartless creatures, and soulless ones. Karlach's heart got replaced with an infernal engine, which makes her heartless according to the contract. So since Will broke it, Mazora punishes him by mutating him into a weird half-demon creature. What makes this so bad for him is not only is he still bound by the rest of the terms of the contract, but not even Mazora can undo the spell that she put on him. So even if he gets out of his contract, he'll always have demon horns. It's gonna make it real hard for people to trust him when he swoops in to save the day. But since it can't be changed, he has to deal with it. Plus he got off easy because Mazora could have just taken his soul for what he did. Either way, there's nothing to be done about it now, so you all head off to the goblin camp, only to be stopped by a weird man named Raphael. He proves to be more than a man shortly after he shows up by snapping his fingers and taking you all to his home where he turns into a very dangerous looking devil. He says that he can remove the bugs from your heads, and he may very well have the power to do exactly what he says, but after seeing how Will's deal with Mazora is going for him, it's very easy to reject the man's offer. He's not upset. In fact, he expected you to turn him down this time, but since you likely won't find another way to free yourselves, he knows you'll be willing to deal with him eventually. But for now, he sends you back so you can get back to your mission to hunt for Halsin. Apparently, a lot of things want to stop you from tracking down the Druid, because while you're sleeping, you wake up to a Astarion trying to bite you. Turns out he's a vampire, which was pretty obvious aside from the fact that he's been walking around in the sunlight like a regular person. That's a side effect of the bug in his head, because under normal circumstances he would be very crispy by now. Normally he only eats animals, but with all of the fighting he's been doing, he needs something a little more filling. He would have told you, but he couldn't be 100% sure you wouldn't have just stabbed him. Honestly, getting caught in the act of trying to bite you was a much better way to die. But once he promises not to try to nibble on anyone else in the camp, you all finally get back to your hunt for the Druid, and what is hopefully a cure for your very unpleasant condition. After a whole lot of unforeseen trials and tribulations, the crew finally reached the goblin camp. They're obviously not willing to let you in alive at first, but a strange symbol pops up on the goblin's face, and it resonates with the bug in your head, letting you manipulate the goblin's mind. The minute the goblin feels your touch on his mind, he recognizes you as something called a true soul, and he's more than willing to answer all of your questions. He doesn't know who Halsin is, but if he was caught with the thieves, then he's either dead or they have him locked up in their facility waiting to get tortured. The goblins are in the middle of a party celebrating the fact that they captured a duke on their last raid, so they'll be too drunk to pay a whole lot of attention to you and your crew while you wander around. While it's true that the bugs in your head let you mess with the goblins' minds, something Astarion is more than eager to try again, the fact that this very useful ability came from the bugs that you're trying to get rid of makes Shadowheart think that using their powers is a bad idea. She's not exactly wrong since you don't know too much about them, so you agree to hold off on using the powers, at least for now. With the camp and your potential cure finally only a short distance away, the tadpoles in your entire group's head start broadcasting a voice into your minds that's so loud that it drops you all. It controls your minds in the same way that you had done to the goblin, but 1,000 times stronger, meaning that any chance you had of blocking it out is gone. The voice in your head shows you 3 people, an elf, a human, and a pale woman that is some other race entirely. The voice calls them its chosen, the people who carry out its will on Faerun. It wants you to join them on their hunt for an artifact that just so happens to be in Shadowheart's pocket. There's no telling why the voice wants the thing, but you get an idea when it activates on its own and pushes the voice out of your heads. Shadowheart has absolutely no idea what caused the relic to go off the way that it did. Her orders were to steal the thing and bring it back to Baldur's Gate, where a group of Shar followers are waiting for her. A smaller group of them have been sent out to get the thing, but she's the only one who lived. She doesn't know much more about the mission since Shar worshippers get their memories removed to keep them from spilling Shar's secrets. In other words, you all have a very powerful, mysterious artifact that some very powerful people are after, and you don't even know why. After that near-death experience, you all decide to take a moment to recover before you step into the hostile goblin camp. But that break gets interrupted when the symptoms from your brain bugs finally start to kick in. Lae'zel gets ready to put an end to all of you to keep you from turning into mind flayers, but you convince the woman to give you all more time to find a cure before she decides that the time is right to self-delete. It's a good thing that you managed to get her to stop, because a strange woman who looks a lot like Khaleesi shows up in your dream, and she stops your transformation. You've heard her voice before because she's the same person who kept you from becoming a skid mark when you fell out of the ship. She doesn't have a whole lot of time, but she promises that you won't turn into mind flayers, at least as long as she's around. She also tells you that it's a good idea to start using the powers that the bugs are giving you. From what she says, you'll need those powers to save both you and her. A battle is going on that will determine the fate of the entire world, and according to the mysterious woman, your side isn't winning at the moment, but you have the power to change that. She'll tell you more later, but for now she needs to get back to the battle, and you need to wake up. Apparently, you're not the only one of your group to have dreams about a strange person offering to protect them, while also trying to convince them to use the creatures that's been stuck into their heads. Some of your crew thinks it's a good idea, while others aren't all that sure you should trust a weird dream visitor, but for the moment there's not all that much you can do, so you all finally head to the goblin camp, where there hopefully won't be any more interruptions. The guards at the heart of the camp aren't all that eager to let strangers wander through their stronghold, and since fighting your way through isn't exactly the most high IQ idea, you decide to use your mind-controlling powers to help you get inside, where you come face to face with the first of the goblin's leaders, Priestess Gut, who the others are calling a true soul because, like you, she has a mind flare bug in her head, one that she is very good at using, which means your plan to hunt down Halsin may be even more difficult than you thought. The goblin priestess Gut immediately recognizes you as a true soul when the creature in her head links with yours and shows her glimpses into your mind. The link works both ways, so you get to see her getting orders from one of the chosen that you had seen when the Absolute nearly took over your mind. But even as you try to dig deeper, you only catch bits and pieces. Something in your mind seems to be affecting your powers, and Gut offers to help you fix them since she thinks you're one of them. She takes you into her private chambers alone, which lets you put an end to the woman without alerting the others, and that lets you keep searching the place for Halsin without having to fight everyone. You find the druid still in his bear form in the dungeon of the camp, where some goblins are doing the very same thing of throwing rocks at a captured animal. When he realizes that you're going to help him, he breaks out of the cell, killing one of the goblins with the falling gate. Then he joins you in finishing off the rest of his captors in the prison. He's very grateful for the help, although he thinks you're a little crazy for helping him when you couldn't possibly have known that he wouldn't have tried to maul you too. Not to mention the fact that anybody coming into a temple full of goblins has to be a few crayons short of a full box. It doesn't take him long to notice the fact that you have a mind flare bug inside of your head. But the fact that you know it's there and aren't serving the Absolute like the true souls proves that you're different. He's been studying them for a while, and from what he's learned, someone is using magic to control people who have been infected. He can't undo the magic, but he thinks he can help you since he's found out where they come from. It's a place called Moonrise Towers. The goblins take their prisoners there, and true souls come out, so Halsin figures that's where the spell to control the tadpoles comes from, and you have to undo that magic if you want to take the bugs out of your head without dying. The big druid is willing to come with you if you can help him finish off the goblin leaders. Since you were planning on doing that anyway and you've already dealt with Gut, you team up with him to take down Minthara and draw Ragzlin. With all three of the leaders taken care of, you all leave to head back to the grove to tell Zevlor and his people that they're safe. That night, you get another visit from your mysterious dream visitor, and she is very happy to see that you've been using the tadpole's powers. She's also happy that Halsin didn't try to remove the parasite since it would have killed you. The magic that's around the thing will kill you if you try to take it out at all, so your only chance is to go and deal with the source of the spells. Unfortunately, not even your mysterious protector knows how to do that. The parasites make the infected people hear a voice of a being called the Absolute, and it convinces them that it's a god, which means the more people who get infected, the further the cult of the Absolute will spread. The upper rank members of the cult have brain bugs like you, and they brand the lesser members so they can use the tadpoles to control them. And those tadpoles are how they get the orders that they're forced to obey. One of those orders will be the one that forces you all to transform, and that order will make all of the infected turn into mind flayers instantly. The fact that this unknown person seems to have a lot of information on the subject raises more questions than it answers. She claims that she was an adventurer like you who got infected with a brain bug, and now she's trying to free herself just like you. She also claims that she almost got free once. Her last attempt didn't work, but she thinks that using you to hunt for the source of the bugs while she keeps you from changing can help free both of you. The power she's using to protect you was something that she stole from someone else, and they want it back. Eventually they'll get it back, which means you're on a timer, so your unnamed assistant sends you back to the waking world so you can head to Moonrise Towers and hopefully find out where the brain bugs really come from and deal with it. Just like before, your companions had the same dream as you, and even though going into the heart of the cult doesn't sound like a great idea, it's the only one you have, so that'll be your next stop once you leave the grove. As per usual, nothing works out the way that it should. Lae'zel finally sees the relic that's been protecting you, and she recognizes it as something that belongs to her people. Common sense isn't all that strong in the Gith woman, so she wants the relic so she can take it back to her people, even though it's the only thing keeping you all alive. Since Shadowheart has the thing, Lae'zel wants to know how the woman got it and why. Since she won't tell her, Lae'zel challenges Shadowheart to a duel the next morning. The Gith can obviously fight, so Shadowheart does the smart thing and catches Lae'zel while she's sleeping. Honor in combat is nice in theory, but if someone threatens you, don't fight them on their terms. Plenty of honorable people have been buried because they tried to play by rules that only they were following. Fights aren't martial arts tournaments or boxing matches. Anything goes, and Shadowheart understands that. She was perfectly fine with killing Lae'zel and telling everyone else that the woman had started turning. Lucky for the Gith, you woke up when you did, and managed to convince them to stop acting like you're not all a part of the same team. Lae'zel accepts that for now, so you all head back to the Druid Grove so you can continue your trip to Moonrise Towers, and hopefully get a step closer to a cure for your pending transformation. On your way back to the Druid's Grove, your crew sees what is always a bad thing to run across in any fantasy world. A dragon is flying right overhead. Dragons, some of them at least, work for the githyanki, which means some of them aren't far away. It doesn't take you all that long to find them. They're right in the middle of a conflict with some members of the Flaming Fist that ends pretty quickly when the dragon and its rider, Kithrak Voss, come swooping down and burn them to a crisp. They are hunting for a weapon of some kind, but that doesn't matter to Lae'zel. Since her people are nearby, that means a creche is nearby too, so she wants to go and talk to them. They don't exactly seem friendly to non-Gith, but Lae'zel is confident that they won't attack you since she's there, so you all follow her. She clearly overestimated her own importance, because Voss not so subtly threatens to skin her for even talking to him like they're equals. Once he puts her in her place, he lets her know that some thieves stole a weapon from a crashing nautiloid, a weapon that just so happens to be the relic that's in Shadowheart's pocket. Lae'zel agrees to join the hunt, but she doesn't tell the man that you all have the weapon because Voss would have likely killed you all for it. He did say that a creche wasn't all that far away before he flies off, but with the way the Gith acted, going into one of their strongholds right now isn't all that high on your priority list. So instead, you make your way back to Halsin and the Druid's Grove. Zevlor and the Tieflings heard the good news, and they've all packed up and are ready to leave, but they'll camp with you and your friends tonight to celebrate before they head off. As for Halsin, he's in the process of dealing with Kaga. He's more than a little ticked off that the woman had tried to seal the grove with the Rite of Thorns. He was going to exile her, but instead he demotes her so she can get re-educated on what it means to be a druid. Her attitude says that re-education might not work, but for now there's more important things to worry about. After doing a bit of celebrating with the tieflings, Halsin makes good on his promise to help. He knows how to get to Moonrise Towers, but it's not exactly an easy trip. The tower is a place covered in a curse that kills and mutates anything and anyone inside of it. Everything in the Shadow Curse land is dangerous, and that says nothing on where you'll have to travel through to get there. There's a path over some mountains that you can use to get there, or you can go through the Underdark. There's a tunnel into the Underdark in the Goblins' camp, which is what Halsin had been looking for when he got captured. A long time ago, a man named Ketheric Thorm made a secret base filled with an army of Dark Justiciars, the elite followers of Shar. Aridin and the other mercenaries had been sent to find a relic called the Night Song that's supposed to be down there. Ketheric had planned on attacking both the Temple of Selûne, since she's Shar's greatest enemy, and Moonrise Tower at the same time. But he'd gotten beaten before he could complete his mission. That's likely the most direct route to the tower. And since Shadowheart seems very interested in learning more about the Dark Justiciars, you decide to travel through the Underdark, and Halsin joins you. With the Goblin camp mostly cleared out, it doesn't take long to find your way into the Underground Temple and the Underdark. The place is extremely dangerous, filled with dark dwarves, plant people who use corpses to make more of their kind, and large animals that travel underground and attack you from below. The place is so dangerous that it may have been better to travel over the mountains, but it's a bit too late for that now. So after battling the evil dwarves at the request of the plant creatures, stealing the dwarves' boat and killing more of their friends, you and your crew reach the Grimforge. A group of cultists and some hired dwarves are trying to get into an old temple through there, but during their search, the true soul in charge, Nier, caused a rock slide and got trapped. The plant men want him dead for what he's done to their people, and Thula, one of the slaves who escaped, asks you to free the gnomes. So since taking out a true soul can't do anything but help your position, you kill the man and his followers with the help of the underpaid dwarves, free the slaves, and make your way to the Shadow Curse land. Before you step through into the very unpleasant path to Moonrise Towers, you come across Elminster Almar, the man who is arguably the most famous and powerful spellcaster in existence, and he's been sent by Mystra herself to find Gale for a very important reason that he won't talk about until he's had a bite to eat. So you delay your trip to Moonrise for just a little bit longer so you can find out just what the man wants from Gale, and hopefully it's not something that will make your already difficult journey even harder. This concludes the story of Act 1 of Baldur's Gate 3. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like it, comment, share it, and subscribe. Donate to the channel if you can, and I'll see you all next time.